Hi again, this is Tim Karr from Free Press. I'm here with Free Speech TV at the National Conference for Media Reform. We're lucky to have with us Leila Nachawati. Leila is a Syrian who is now working as a professor in Madrid, but a lot of her work focuses on the uprisings across the Middle East and North Africa and the use of social media in those uprisings. Leila, can you tell us a little bit about the sort of work that you're doing right now?
Well, we're following the situation of free speech in the Middle East and North Africa, and the truth is attacks against free speech activists are getting worse and worse under these authoritarian regimes. And if we go to the very extreme example of the Syrian regime, we are witnessing how the single act of writing a blog post or writing a poem, singing a song, or making a comment on Facebook is being considered treason, and activists are being arrested, harassed, and tortured for these very simple free speech activities.
So the Arab Spring, or what we know as the Arab Spring, really began in early 2011, at least from a very Western perspective. I'm sure that a lot of people who were doing activism there have been active many years before that. And in the 2 years since, how has this kind of online activism that we saw in places like Tunisia and Egypt, how has that evolved? How have activists used the tools of social media and other web tools differently?
Yeah, so the changes that we are witnessing, of course, have some background. Things do not happen overnight. So there was a lot of interaction and conversations among activists in the MENA region, in the Middle East and North Africa region, previous to the 2011 uprising. But it is true that after 2011, we have witnessed some sort of intensive course on online activism. Given the very extreme circumstances and pressure, activists have had to learn the hard way. They have had to learn from the lessons of repression, of censorship. So they are developing ways for circumvention, to protect themselves, to protect their identity. So we can actually see some sort of evolution since the beginning of 2011 until now. So we see, for example, in Syria, more and more videos are recorded from behind or from way up, so that you don't show people's faces, because we have seen what happens when governments can see people's identity. So there's more emphasis on protecting people's identities now, on even software to blur the faces of people on videos. So all of this is a result of the evolution in activism. And another great example is Kuwait. We are witnessing historic demonstrations in Kuwait, and they're mainly being organized via Twitter, like since from the venues to the colors that demonstrators are wearing. This is organized via Twitter, and activists have even anticipated repression by the regime, and they have contacted WordPress and asked WordPress to protect their information and warn them against handing their information, their IPs, to the Kuwaiti government. So they're anticipating repression, and this is a result of learning from the lessons of their neighbors.
So we know that there's a very clear threat from a lot of the governments in the region. Do the companies, the social media companies like Facebook and YouTube and Twitter that are used as tools of this kind of organizing, do they present a problem for activists as well, or have they been helpful in addressing some of the concerns?
Well, we cannot forget that these are companies, that they have their own interests, that they're business, that they're not non-profit, and we tend to believe, or we tend to feel comfortable within these platforms, and we tend to relax, and we tend to think these are our free spaces. We tend to feel at home, but this is actually not at home. We are renting a space there. We can be kicked out anytime. Regulations can change. We can become uninvited. So we should start thinking about working on our own free, controlled platforms. I use social media to spread the word about messages, because obviously these spaces are crowded. So you don't want to go to a place that's very free and safe, but where no one's there. So I use these spaces, Facebook, Twitter, and social media as a whole, to spread the message, but I advise against not working, not holding conversations on issues that you would not like to be disclosed within these kind of platforms.
So you talked earlier during a panel that you participated in here about the importance of bearing witness, the importance of people going on social media and viewing some of the videos that, for example, are coming out of Syria. But is bearing witness enough? Is there something else that people should be doing?
Well, visibility is actually a way to protect prisoners of conscience, because governments do not like it when they commit the abuses and the whole world is watching. And we have countless examples of how visibility saves lives and how protecting these people by making big campaigns around them is actually saving lives. It is not the only thing we can do, but it is something that actually stops governments from going as far as they would like to go. Another thing we can be aware of is our role as consumers, which is actually paying attention to the role of corporations, because we always tend to pay a lot of attention to the role of governments, but we don't usually pay as much attention to the role of corporations. So there is a list that I recommend taking a look at, which is the Telco Hall of Shame, which is the list of companies that are actually top 10 providers of surveillance technology or infrastructure that's actually somehow violating free speech.
And I believe that list is at accessnow.org.
Yes, and I actually recommend following the work we're doing in Global Voices Advocacy, also the Electronic Frontier Foundation, and they have a lot of recommendations on these issues.
Okay, and can you tell us why you thought it was important to come to Denver for the National Conference of Media Reform?
Well, I like the name itself. So I believe that not having free and independent media is the way to have easy to manipulate societies. So in order to ensure we continue to be free and educated, we need to ensure free media.
And is there a kind of, you see a lot of advocates here, it's a conference for advocates, but it's also a conference for organizations that work with advocates to represent the public interest. Is there a similar structure in some of the countries that you cover? Is there a civil society that is addressing issues of press freedom, that is addressing the issues of internet freedom and privacy protection?
This is quite a unique event, I think, and I would recommend, I mean, there are other events, but I'm not sure that there's the exact same of civil society stakeholders plus government stakeholders and agencies. I think this is a very unique combination, therefore very healthy and useful, but I would recommend to make this more and more the international media reform conference.
I think we're moving in that direction. That's great news. So thank you, Leila. That's all for now from Free Press and Free Speech TV at the National Conference for Media Reform.